guys, today we're going to learn a bit about sodium phosphate and its use cases. And as you'll see as we kind of dive into this, its use cases largely revolve around aerobic performance. This video presentation is brought to you by specifically landline telephones and hand sanitizer. So without further ado, I'm Dr. Joel, and let's get into this. So first, let's kind of lay the groundwork of what is sodium phosphate. It's an essential mineral that's going to be found in our red meats, fish, dairy, and most fortified cereals. If you're like me, especially with your cereal intake, you're likely not going to be any type of deficient in this because cereals are delicious. I can go through a box of cereal in like 3 days and not even think a thing of it. Some of the ways it functions in the body is it helps with bone health, cell membrane structures, DNA structures, and potentially improves oxygen transport through lactate buffering, which we'll kind of see a little bit later. So it's useful for other things, but let's be honest, you're here for specifically sport performance. I know you. So potential ergogenic effects, which is just big science talk for what sports can I do better. So sodium phosphate has been shown to improve aerobic capacity, anaerobic threshold, so that point at which you start to accrue lactate, improving your mean power output, and improving intermittent running performance. So right out of the gate, you're kind of seeing here that there's a lot of sports that could really benefit from this. Basketball, soccer, baseball, golf, tennis, things like that. Golf to a lesser degree, but mean power output can potentially help there. Many studies also show little to no effect on performance. So there's kind of like this group of studies that show some potential benefit, this group of studies that show not potential benefits, but as a whole, the literature tends to lean towards it having an ergogenic effect, especially if you're in that niche of sports that could potentially benefit from it. One of the reasons that we have kind of this mix in the literature is there's not a lot of evidence on dose, what your current training status is when you take it. So if you're untrained or advanced, absorption methods and best ways to take it, as well as studies on women specifically. And again, just to reiterate, the bulk of the literature is kind of in favor of it having ergogenic effects, but it's not as conclusive as something like creatine. Did you take your creatine today? Okay, so for dosages, most research suggests 1 gram and doing this about 4 times a day. But a more accurate estimate is going to be about 50 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. This takes into account, again, how much you weigh, which obviously dictates how much dosage gets throughout your body and how well you can use it. Just like with caffeine, creatine, and the other supplement, body weight is almost always taken into account. Using it for 3 to 6 days prior to the sporting event is likely going to be best practices, and dosages of less than 3 grams are likely not enough for most people to see an ergogenic effect. There's theoretical reasoning to assume that pairing sodium phosphate with creatine might be beneficial, potentially due to improving the ATP PCR system, as well as potentially repleting glycogen, though we need a little bit more literature on that, but you're going to be taking both anyways, so it's likely not going to hurt anything. You are taking your creatine, right? Okay, so some practical takeaways here. The evidence favors endurance athletes for the usage of sodium phosphate, and it's likely that higher doses are not helpful per the current evidence, as well as doses below that 3 grams or that 30 milligrams per kilogram. It has a pretty good safety profile, but what I would recommend doing is experimenting with it around a not particularly important competition, because you don't want to get something like upset stomach, which is the main side effect from something like this. And again, it's possibly worth pairing with creatine, but again, let's just be honest, we're all on creatine already, or we should be. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully you learned something. This supplement seems to be a little bit more straightforward. Overall, pretty safe, pretty effective for aerobic training. Start small, experiment with yourself, and see if this is something that could benefit your aerobic work. Have a good one.